It is called the People's National Party because it will unswervingly aim at all those measures which will serve the masses of the country. No man is a sincere and honest Democrat who does not accept the elementary principle that the object of civilization is to raise the standard and security of the masses of the people. I do believe that we will have launched tonight a movement which, as nothing before started in Jamaica, will make of our country a real place and a real country, so that our children and our children's children will be proud to say, we belong to Jamaica. To tell the story of the People's National Party is to tell the journey of our people. The long walk to claim our home, the march, the struggle, the labor. From being chattel and homeless, from being without status and rights, to the empowerment of hard-won freedom, self-awareness, and ownership. From dependence to independence. From sufferation to smadification. Finally, in August 1838, we were full free. But the power to determine our future was a far way off. Our pockets were empty, but our hearts were full, and our bodies were able. We purchased land, established free villages, found a way to get our wares to market, and keep our families together. We believed it would change. It must change. It had to change.
After the war, Marcus Garvey, who had built up the biggest black nationalist organization the world had ever seen, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, came home in 1927. Tumultuous reception. They say the biggest crowd Jamaica had ever witnessed.
Garveyism had a profound impact. It had started a tradition of grassroots organizing, a parliamentary tradition, if you will.
1929, he forms the People's Political Party. He contests the elections of 1930, wins a seat to the local council. Then he's sent to prison for a 3-month term. He doesn't get to fill his seat in the council. Then he runs for the Legislative Council and loses. By 1935, he himself self-imposed exile to London. He said, I left Jamaica a broken man. Broken in body, broken in spirit, broken in pocket. I will never, ever return. In the decade of the 30s, other Jamaicans started to return home, all of whom would become members of the People's National Party. Alexander Bustamante came in 1934. William Grant came back that same year. He had been a member of the UNIA. Kenneth George here, he's about 27 when he starts something called the Jamaica Reform Association. He gets Noel Nethersole, a Rhodes Scholar in 1922. He was a solicitor. Very importantly, O.T. Fairclough came back that year.
As a matter of fact, O.T. Fairclough should be regarded as the founder of the party.
What I thought of doing was to try to interest the most important Jamaicans at the time in these ideas that I had. Very fortunately, Mr. Norman Manley was interested.
Until then, Norman had been in the legal minefield.
He also founded what is regarded as a prototype for community development, Jamaica Welfare.
The Jamaica Welfare Movement, of course, did grassroots community organizing in a number of communities to improve people's not only social conditions in the communities, but also economic initiatives in crafts, etc.
Up to that time, though, there's lethargy, political lethargy. What transforms all of this lethargy is the 1938 labor rebellion.
I can remember coming from school when I reached at Duke Street corner. See this big crowd, but days after that, people that working was on the street, but they say strike on.
Half of the Jamaican labor force was either unemployed or underemployed. Worse, wages had not changed in the last 100 years.
I think you could say that the people who were making it in terms of the working class were people who had the opportunity to migrate, to build the Panama Canal and to cut cane in Cuba just to be able to survive.
You'll find that there was constant talk about unemployment and what are we to do to find life and work for the people. It should not surprise anybody that 1938 happened. What should surprise everybody is the way in which it happened.
For 3 weeks in May in 1938, they brought the British colonial administration to its knees.
They have meeting all about, you have Mr. Manley and you have Buster Manley.
Edna Manley was down on the dock with Aggie Bernard, and it completely transformed their outlook on politics and their confidence in a local political class.
There was a small steering committee that was established, which included, among others, one Howard Felix Handon Cook.
And at the meeting, we decided to select 21 people who would be the sort of executive of the People's National Party. That day at Silver Slipper, the People's National Party came into being.
In a way, public opinion is really the opening gun in the campaign to bring to the people of Jamaica a sense of their destiny, their importance, and the reasons why they should aspire to found their own government.
That moment in the 1930s, there was also A. Domingo, who was first an activist with the UNIA in New York, then an activist with the Socialist Party in the United States, and Adolph Roberts, a Jamaican journalist and writer. The Jamaica Progressive League was formed by Roberts and them to think about what should the nationalist movement look like in the Caribbean, and therefore who contributed to that formation.
The time has come to realize that we must have organized politics in Jamaica based upon adult suffrage, or otherwise the common people will have no representation and this sort of thing will happen again. What Jamaica wants, a real party. And then it all began.
The winds of change excited a cultural transformation, and the arts took flight.
On the verandas of Drumblare, you have the makings of both a cultural and a political center. That is where public opinion gets started, where the JOA gets started, where the discussions about the PNP take place.
So the beginning of the party was the beginning of the intellectuals and people of merit getting together and designing a policy for them.
The PNP's constitution, which today remains a model of a democratic anti-colonial party's constitutional form. It had a big influence a little later on the ANC, the African National Congress in South Africa.
A sense of nationalism was also provoked, aroused and challenged by Edna Manley, the wife of Norman, who was a gifted artist and teacher.
She says when she came to Jamaica, Jamaican artists would not paint a blackface. They didn't paint Jamaican scenery. Edna Manley, to the extent that one person can be responsible for a social process, Edna Manley changed her outlook, certainly, in the visual arts.
All her carvings were of black people. And through her art, she was teaching us how to look in the mirror and be proud of what we saw.
She led not only in art and culture, but in the social development in a practical way. feeding people when they were hungry and so on.
On September 18, 1938, the roots of the PNP were firmly planted when Norman Manley declared, "There is all the difference in the world between living in a place and belonging to it, and feeling that your own life and your own destiny is irrevocably bound up in the life and destiny of that country."
Clifford Cripps was invited to speak. He was a Fabian socialist from England.
And he set out in very clear and unambiguous terms the deficits in the imperial relationships and for greater involvement of the people in the decision-making process.
We need to think about Fabian socialism as an acceptable form of socialism which recognized the need, as was wont in that period of time, to have the state play a central role in improving the welfare of the poor, in controlling the worst excesses of the free market system, etc. Even in the United States, Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal was an American version of socialism. The debate was always then as to whether what was meant by socialism was the Fabian Labour Party form or the Russian revolutionary form.
We oppose socialism, we believe it. When we say socialism is founded on respect for the full and sacred dignity and rights of each individual human being. So our nation, a moment of destiny has come. We shall not cease from mortal fight. Nor shall our souls sleep in our hands. In real peace, Jerusalem, in Jamaica, green and heavenly.
Mr. Manley was talking about Jamaica and what Jamaica hoped for, what the OP had for Jamaica, with all those men that were there. And I remember that was one of the main things that grabbed my heart as a child. And that is the reason why I am a supporter of the PNP, to love people.
It's the DNA, so it determines there's an imprint of how we express ourselves, the issues we consider important, the fights we take on.
You're driven by a belief that what you're doing is the right thing and that you're working with a team of people that have a similar goal.
Certainly the PNP is a family. It is a family. We have a mother, father, and a whole ton of siblings and cousins. And the PNP is that.
In this time when people are so distant from each other, it's a good thing to feel that you're a part of a larger body.
In a meeting, I'm Comrade Robinson. I'm not Minister Robinson. The term is friend. That's what it means. It's a friend. And we all relate to each other as comrades, regardless of whatever other title or position we may hold.
The People's National Party, we always stand up for the people, particularly the poor, the oppressed, and the dispossessed. And in 1938, the formation of the People's National Party, Norman Washington Manley indicated that he wanted to ensure that we could change the standard of living of the masses of the Jamaican people.
To understand the modern Jamaican political process, one must have a deep understanding of that period. Both leaders of the trade union arm and the political arm were members of the same party. So essentially you had one mass party in the country with all of the critical elements of labor and the middle class. And that gave rise to deep concern among the colonial leaders, because it would be a fundamental threat to the status quo. Trade unions predated politics. There were trade unions before 1938. But the problem, they were not protected against tort, which is to say that if anything happened during the strike, the trade unions would have to pay for whatever happened. That was eliminated as part of the package of measures which emerged out of the 1938 events. So there is this parallel birth of modern trade unionism and political parties, which in fact Without it, the political parties would have had no serious popular mass base.
We had a governor called Richards. He was afraid of the People's National Party. So, while Bustamante was in prison, it is said, I don't know truly, that he tried to get Bustamante released so that he could come out and fight Norman Manley.
I actually took Smith out of bed at 1 o'clock in the morning to renew an application before a High Court judge for bail. And I had an assurance from the governor that he would direct the judge. These things are not supposed to happen, but life is life. On the understanding that I would appear and give evidence that in my judgment, the safety of Kingston would be enhanced by the release of Bustamante on bail.
Leader of the trade union movement, Alexander Bustamante, who was also a member of the People's National Party, split off from the People's National Party and formed his own party, the Jamaica Labour Party.
In 1944, it was the beginning of an exercise where the important position now filled by the British would be filled by us.
Universal adult suffrage, or the right to vote, was a critical part of the underlying early history of the People's National Party.
I'll let we know that they run PNP and Labour and all of that. Some is for the Labour rights, some is for the PNP, and we vote for whosoever we choose.
On behalf of the people, the PNP demanded the vote. And in 1944, after years of grassroots education and intense negotiation, every adult Jamaican, regardless of race, creed, or economic status, had that right. It was a proud moment for the party. But disappointment swiftly followed.
It is one of those ironies of history that the party who had campaigned for universal adult suffrage did not fare very well at the polls. Workers and unemployed rallied to the concept of labor.
The party did not contest all 32 constituencies because the movement decided they would not contest any elections in any consensus where they were not organized. In the case of the PNP, meaning that where they did not have groups functioned in such a way as to give the party the kind of organizational support that it required. The strength of a democracy lies in the people. Their choices reflect their voice, their concerns, their hopes. The party heard them and went forth to spread the word and share their vision in every corner of the island. The soil had to be fertilized. The seeds of organization were planted.
The only way one was going to displace the Labour Party would be through political education, and that's how the group structure grew up, teaching them about the effect that the failure of the poor people to have a vote would have on the government of the country.
As the march continued, the voices within the party diverged. Left, right, left, right.
Because the party was founded as an umbrella type organization, very much like the Congress, the Indian Congress. It brought within it all kinds of groups.
There had been a significant internal split that took place in 1952.
Some members were promoting ideological views which were inconsistent with the tenets of the party.
In truth and in fact, when I examined carefully, they were more progressive than the rest of us, and they wanted equality in everything. Those who say it must come, those were the ones that we call the extreme.
the Hills and Arthur Henry were no longer associated with the party, and they took with them much of the support from the workers. In this situation, the National Workers' Union was born.
And over the years, since its formation, has led the pack. We have been the standard by which all unions have been judged. We have led in the bauxite and aluminum sector. We have led in the sugar sector, the manufacturing sector, in the garment sector, in the public sector.
1949 to 1959 is the greatest decade that the national movement and the PNP has ever experienced. Why? Norman is in Parliament, and although he's in opposition, he leads the House of Representatives. All the major legislation that is passed, he's the author of them.
13 strong, the PNP made their presence felt. Not yet the majority, but their representation was clear. And so in 1955, the people ushered in a new era, and the man with the plan.
And there's a complete transformation of the Jamaican economy. To the old agricultural sector, you are now an expanded and modern tourism sector, an expanded manufacturing sector, and a new bauxite sector.
Critical institutions were formed, Bank of Jamaica, Jamaica Tourist Board, perhaps the most significant social programs in that period, which were transformative of the whole of Jamaican society, the most significant of that being the introduction of the common entrance, which opened up the educational system.
When, at that time, up to 1957, there were only 2 scholarships per parish for a person entering a secondary school, 1 boy, 1 girl, and 2 half scholarships.
Show me a prosperous nation, and I show you an educated people. And Norman Manley believed in the education of the people of Jamaica and ensured that policies that he implemented benefited Jamaicans from all walks of life.
No longer Chief Minister, Premier Manley speaks of federation, of uniting the islands. 1961 is referendum time. Again the people speak. Again the party must listen.
One of the qualities that perhaps is being overlooked for the moment was the strength of his belief in the right of people to choose, and his amazingly philosophical willingness to accept the choices even when they were contrary to what he would have wished and maybe sometimes defeated him.
He figured that if the party had come through the referendum successfully, that it would put him in a more authoritative position to be able to unite the country. Regrettably, it never happened. We lost the referendum, and we also lost the election in 1962.
Jamaica will stand alone, but this time as an independent nation. Forward, forward, together.
By that time, I had come to this conclusion, that we should nail our flag to the mast of complete, full self-government in the sense of independence, and fight for that.
The eyes of the world were on the Honorable Norman Manley, Premier of Jamaica, as he prepared to leave his homeland for the most momentous of all conferences. The failure in practice of the Federation of the West Indies and its dissolution were common knowledge. Now Jamaica went to the conference table confident in her own future as an independent country and determined to bring the date of fulfillment as near as possible.
Mr. Secretary, this independence conference marks the beginning of the end of a very long road which started over 300 years ago. The road ends, Mr. Secretary, at a time when all empires decline, when colonialism has become a word of ugly meaning. There is no country in the world not now independent which is more fit to achieve that status than Jamaica now is.
I warmly welcome Jamaica to the Commonwealth family of nations. I'm sure that your country, which has already given an example to the world of how people of many varied origins and traditions may live together in harmony, will have a vital contribution to make far beyond the immediate area of the world in which it is situated.
Before independence, our history was one where we had an autocratic administration from somebody abroad. Politics to most of us means what you can see through your window. When he looks outside and he sees the local water supply, when he sees the road taking him to the marketplace, when he sees the sanitary inspector taking the mosquito water away from him, that is where he has his contact with government.
Organizations are a critical part of any modern democracy. And as much as they are vilified here in Jamaica, they are necessary.
You need to have people with the capacity to plan, to think through issues, and to offer solutions.
It's about building a culture of participation, and that also has to begin in our groups, at the region, in our divisions, in our constituency, and in the party as a whole. And it is about how we provide that space for individuals. I like to say, especially when we disagree with them, that's when it's most important, because we need to make sure that their voices are heard.
A society cannot exist without politics. And the more the people participate in the process, then the better policies we'll have, because decision makers will have to listen more keenly with the people. When you withdraw from your position, from the process, you are leaving that critical decision in the hands of too few.
If one wanted to do more than talk about the changes that were needed in the society, you had to become personally engaged.
The only means that the ordinary Jamaican has had, starting from 1938, to be a participant, a maker in history rather than just an observer, has been through the People's National Party.
PNP was founded on principle, values, attitude, aims, objective. So each person in the PNP is equal. My voice is included in policies of the People's National Party that shape policies of government.
As a tree has roots, branches, and leaves, so too a political party is larger than any individual member. There were many more than 99 safely in the fold, and this shepherd knew it was time for a new leader.
I have dedicated 30 years of my life to helping to create a nation. I do not say farewell. I will in February next year close a long chapter in the book of my life. But I cannot imagine a life that was lived without that chapter. And I will continue to live and be surrounded by the memory of my political days and the blessings of the love and affection and loyalty that I have enjoyed and know I will continue to enjoy for all the days of my life.
A great man in Jamaica. He keeps the country. We can depend on him because his work was wonderful in Jamaica.
Michael didn't go into politics easily. He knew that his father paid a great price in his health in many ways, his ability to live a normal, friendly, easy life. He had an extraordinary relationship with his father, you know. It was almost telepathic, the understanding and the sympathy between them. When his father died, I think it took on another dimension. So Michael hesitated for a long time. I think he must also have felt nervous of following somebody who had already, blazed the trail.
What I said to him was that any Jamaican with that sort of talent owed it to Jamaica to go into politics, to offer himself. If the people didn't want him, if they didn't think that he was being honest and being straightforward, they would reject him. And if they did want him, well, then he had a chance to prove what he could do.
Michael was living with us at the time. About 1 o'clock in the morning, my bedroom door is flung open by Michael. Ken, who the hell told you to go down there and nominate me? Because Ken nominated him to nominate me. I didn't have any discussion with you. He said, listen, Michael, we live in a democracy. And I could nominate anybody. No, I've nominated you. If you didn't want it, you should have said declined. I never slept the rest of the night because I argued for the rest of the night. But once he was nominated, he won the election.
So we saw ourselves as a generation of economic independence, but there were still some social legacies that needed to be corrected, including education, greater access, equal pay for equal work. So all these things were taking place, and then in their context.
There's the social transformation, what is referred to as smadification, where every Jamaican has a personality and individual identity which is recognized and expressed.
Power for the people, yes indeed, power for the people, let them have it.
Viewing government from opposition is one thing. Getting into government is another thing. On the one hand, you have the immediate needs of the masses of the people. As politicians, you are expected to fill those needs. The expectations of the People's National Party, when Michael came to power in 1972, were high.
The first decade after the first decade of Jamaica's independence, this society had been hopelessly divided. There had never been such a concentration of wealth. This concentration started emerging even before.
What you have is a situation, therefore, where the country is not really decolonized. The colonial structures, the colonial ways of thinking are still way heavily in the country. The People's National Parties of the 1970s set out to decolonize Jamaica.
To be realistic as distinct from romantic, my dream for Jamaica would be to find a way to create a complete mobilization of the Jamaican people so that they were working together to build something, instead of like now, when they often work against each other and destroy many of the possibilities of progress and change. Because the truth is you can commit yourself to a just society and to the idea of people living well and all that goes with that. But if you can't mobilize the people so that they pull together to do it, they feel we are Jamaicans, this is our country, and it's up to us to make it into a great place, you'll never be able to realize the dream.
Right now, a young man grows up in Nago's head, and so long as he remains there, he goes to scurry on the beach, no work. He goes to Hustlers Bernard Lodge, no work.
Independence, many had assumed would have meant access to jobs, access to positions and so on. And a lot of this hadn't changed in those years. So there was a combination of both a popular grassroots dissatisfaction and a middle-class dissatisfaction.
And I say that the People's National Party is totally committed to the young people of this country. And if we cannot save the many who are young, we will not be able to save the few who are old.
Young people need to be engaged in the process of building the country to which they belong.
Well, the YO really is the eyes and ears of the party. It's really a vanguard movement that's supposed to keep the mother party, so to speak, on its toes and to be very constructively critical of issues that they believe in their own way as young people will help to advance the cause of the masses and the working class of the country.
Every party needs a blend. It needs a blend of experience. It needs a blend of young, passionate energy. All of these come together to make a good political party.
I have served under Norman Manley because, well, do I remember going to executive meetings that he chaired at South Camp Road. And there were those who thought that we should not be allowed to attend the executive meetings, the oldsters. But the younger ones then, like P.J. Patterson and Tony Spalding, they insisted that we should be there.
The PNP has, in fact, given us a seat at the table at all levels. As a matter of fact, from the divisional level to the executive of the party, the PNP has given us the opportunity to sit and to discuss issues.
A lot of those things that Neville Martin sang about in this struggle, it is the youth arm that really trumpeted these things on the road and made the connections. When you talk about democratic socialism, it was the youth arm that were the main exponents of this democratic socialist posture.
I think that one of the things that it has done for us, particularly my group of persons within the YO, is it implanted in us a spirit of purpose. So at all times we know what we're about. So even when the going gets tough, remember why we are part of the People's National Party, why we do what we do.
Well, after the 72 election, I mean, let's face it, the women really put Michael in power. And he figured that he needed to harness that energy.
We were far ahead of some of the other countries in the world in terms of equal pay for equal work, maternity leave with pay, identifying those things that were critical and important to women at the time and taking the approach to say, look, enough is enough.
The Jamaican woman now has a sense of self, which she did not have before. And by this I mean just a pride and a dignity, just a feeling that here am I, a Jamaican woman, and I'm equal.
Everything was there in place. It wasn't as if we're struggling for women's rights in isolation.
And we certainly have sought to ensure that at the level of participation, the voice of women is heard throughout not just the political space, but the national space. We got really to be very powerful. I mean, you know, let's face it, they were afraid of us after a while. I mean, the leftists were pushing Tony Spalding. They wanted him to be a vice president after Michael because they know they can't move Michael. One day Michael called me and said, Val, go down to the Gordon House now and take the women out of the place, please. They're causing a lot of trouble. Elman, Erman, all of them sit down upstairs, the gallery. And every time Tony looked up at them and said, one leader. They became very militant because in many ways I think they helped to save the party from swinging away from what NW had envisaged the party to be and kept Michael on what he was supposed to do.
King of glory shall come.
The support by the Rastafarian community was extremely important because it showed that Michael Manley wanted to have a single society, that everybody had a fair say, an equal opportunity. And for the first time, Michael Manley was saying there were some people like bastards, there were some people like Rastafarians, there were some people from the lower echelons that were once perceived as backdoor people that were now of equal opportunity and equal experiences with the basics of a society that allowed for a person to achieve his best self.
You know that we are a socialist country, and as a socialist country, we have to make sure that there is equality of opportunity. As a government, we feel that there must be free education.
if education doesn't work, and the PNP has always been the party of education, if education doesn't work, why then no other aspect of the growth agenda, none of our hopes for development are really going to be sustainable.
I always speak to myself when I tell persons about the People's National Party to the fact that I believe that I'm a product of the party and what it represents. I'm a poor Jamaican, born to a domestic helper and to a father who is incarcerated. In 2008, the domestic helper and the incarcerated man had 3 children graduating from the University of the West Indies. And that is what the PNP represents. Taking somebody from humble beginning and affording them the opportunity, equality in access to opportunity for them to be able to better themselves.
I benefited like thousands of Jamaicans, and to a very large extent, my personal experience during that period of time helped me to appreciate and understand that this is really the party. Because this party puts education first and not selfish.
30 plus 3 plus 20. Tell me how is 30 made of? Alright, where would I put the 3? Under the unit line.
Jamal deals with the fundamentals of reading and writing. And I really am trying in a very simple way to try and deal with the fundamentals of politics and political understanding.
The party from its founding had always indicated that it was democratic socialist. But it never, over all those years, sought to bring that to the fore. And Michael emphasized the revival and resurgence of political education. People began to understand what it really meant.
The central tactic of socialism is mobilization. The heart of socialism is its concern for human welfare. The final aim of socialism is the creation of a just society based upon principles of equality, self-reliance, discipline, and participation by all of the people in the processes of government and the running of the economy. That is what we're about.
It was a means of redefining the political space in order to address not only the developmental goals, but also the challenges.
I know where we are going, yes I know, yes I know.
Yes, socialism must win, because it's our only hope. If socialism doesn't win, just as well Jamaica die.
But socialism to I mean the upliftment of our country, the upliftment of the people of Jamaica, seeing to identify ourselves as a nation with all progressive force of the world.
There wasn't much future for the youths once, but there is now when you take into consideration the programs that are being implemented under the socialist administration.
We have just started what we should have been doing in 1962, and that's why we are going through this economic crisis. We must suffer as a new nation, and we are determined to continue until we overcome.
For all small third world countries, their attempt to change themselves has to begin with the problem of changing the world. If you can't change the world, if you can't change the distribution of wealth in the world, you haven't got a chance of changing really the condition of any of the small third world parts of that world.
I think our greatest achievement was internationalizing our position, putting us on the map of the world instead of just being a little isolated country with no foreign affairs of its own. We were there on the map, for better or for worse.
What we now call progressive internationalism was to make a direct link with one of our closest neighbors, Cuba, which, as most people know, had been ostracized by the Americans, so that would bring on the ire of the Americans. And this sort, we see that in the terms of anti-Americanism as pro-Jamaica.
Jamaican people, we love our Jamaican people. Jamaican people are nice people.
The school now is really a work and study school. The gift from Cuba to Jamaica is a really wonderful gift.
By the time you get to the 1960s and 1970s, the party has a certain profile and there's a certain expectation.
And they were trying at the time to carve a third path. That is to say, look, we're not into this Cold War thing. We're newly independent for the most part. We want to forge our own destinies. And Michael Manley became a leader in the brief period when the non-aligned movement flourished in the 1970s. Manley became one of its most important spokespersons.
Now, our connection with the left and our persistence to do that was to express the fact that we chose them not because they were communists, but we chose them because they had an egalitarian doctrine. And as an egalitarian doctrine, they appealed to the socialist world, which was our world.
Not to discredit traditional partners, but to broaden the horizons, to ensure that we were able to facilitate the development of this country, not by dependency on one set of persons, but persons of similar vein. What is it that the collaboration between ourselves could bring about?
Now there are certain people in the world who say now, why are we taking this risk to anger the United States of America? And the answer is this: as long as this party is in power, we intend to walk through the world on our feet and not on our knees.
If there's one thing that the People's National Party is internationally renowned for, it's its foreign policy. We have always been correct, and we have never, ever wavered.
Cuba is a communist country, the whole world know that. Jamaica is not a communist country, the whole world know that. The purpose of the communist line is to frighten the businessmen. The purpose of the communist line is to frighten those people abroad who are thinking of investing in Jamaica. They spread the story so that they can spread fear and confusion.
That wealthy minority was not about to buy into a political program that was going to stress equality of opportunity. And there was serious resistance there. Secondly, it was the height of the Cold War, where every movement towards socialism was interpreted as communism.
Manley describes himself as a democratic socialist who sees capitalism as an evil, though a necessary one. In many countries, he'd be regarded as a moderate, and it's only fairly recently that he's been branded an extremist.
The business class swallowed the propaganda that we were becoming a communist country and that their wealth and progress would be all absorbed by the communist party. They believed it, and so they left.
Manley believes the highest price he's had to pay is the collapse of the Jamaican economy. This is Kingston International Airport, and the conveyor belt transporting luggage looks like a mobile supermarket. Domestic goods unobtainable here are brought in by passengers from North America. Without foreign exchange, Jamaica is running out of the basic commodities people need to live.
In one day, oil prices went up in 1973 by 400%, from about $2.98 per barrel to nearly $12. This 400% increase in the cost of energy almost wiped out Jamaica's manufacturing sector overnight.
A number of firms and confirming houses abroad that have been in the habit of extending credit to Jamaican importers have suddenly started saying that they are no longer prepared to extend this credit because they do not believe that Jamaica will be able to find the foreign exchange to repay them. And they have said this in spite of the fact that Jamaica has never defaulted on a foreign commitment.
And the seeds of what later came to be known as destabilization came about.
Destabilization actually means the deliberate attempt to create the kind of conditions in a country that makes the people lose confidence in themselves, their society, and above all, in their government. And it takes the form, in Jamaica certainly, the main instrument for destabilization is violence.
I don't think that you can have a situation where clearly there was violence being perpetuated, and with a certain kind of political calculus in operation, that you can then say, no, we're not going to find a way to try and stop it. And the instruments that the state have at its hands is the state of emergency.
Under the state of public emergency, the security forces are authorized to arrest and detain all persons whose activities are likely to endanger the public safety. The security forces have been given instructions to use their powers under this state of emergency to lock up and keep locked up all such persons, and in particular the gunmen and terrorists, without regard to political and other affiliations, real or pretended.
Joshua held his rod of correction high and declared that we are not for sale. He rowed the boat ashore on a wave of songs written against all Babylon systems. Reggae, with its staple of faith and fame and fortune, spoke its revelations from the souped-up sound systems. And even in the midst of so many challenges, Jamaicans answered overwhelmingly and decided to trust the dream, decided to affirm its independence in ways that were new and revolutionary. This was the promise of the PNP victory in 1976.
From I was 14, I started work, and I never had in mind that one day I would want a house of my own. And as time goes by, I find that I own a house now through the government of Jamaica.
Because I know that no family can begin to have a life unless they have a home, because all of life begins in the home.
And when you look at that revolution during the 70s with housing on Tony Sparley, that built all of those houses in South St. Andrew that people can live in dignity and pride. I say glory to the People's National Party.
To develop roads in the hinterland of this country, it was something that wasn't given too much thought before 1972. But it's something that has been implemented now for the benefit of farmers, to lift production, for the safety of travel, and all the economic benefits which go with the construction of roads.
Government has long recognized the need for the country to produce more food for itself. Prime Minister Manley and his team took positive steps to boost local agricultural production. Came Hounslow, Operation Grow, Project Land Lease, the Nairere Farm, the Cornwall Community Development Project.
This country had been plagued by the problem of illegitimacy. The majority of the population were, in legal terms, bastards. And that meant that the great majority of Jamaicans were condemned to an inferior legal status. And so we introduced the Status of Children Act, which abolished the concept of illegitimacy. This at one stroke completely revolutionized the legal status of the majority of the Jamaican people.
For the ordinary Jamaican, the economic problems have made themselves felt as unemployment and inflation. About a quarter of the workforce is now without a job, and inflation is around 30%. Both developments are hardest at the very people the Manley government is most trying to help.
And we in Jamaica hit upon the idea, not for us alone, but embarked upon a mission throughout the OPEC countries to say, if you would set aside a small fraction of your enormous oil earnings, you could supply a source of development finance for the third world. We could not get the time of day. I think two countries in the whole world showed any interest, Algeria and Venezuela. So when we came back, we now had to face the nitty-gritty.
And that is how we eventually felt that we just had no alternative but to turn to the IMF. That's how it actually happened.
Well, first I announced an austerity program. Michael Manley had spoken that we had to stop importing certain things like cornflakes because there was a foreign exchange problem. And he said we needed to establish 1-year interim tactical holding agreement with the IMF. And during that 1 year, this would allow us to look at other economic programs and trading opportunities. By December, it was announced that we had failed that IMF test by the slimmest of margins, but the IMF wanted their pound of flesh. We had to cut the social programs, the National Youth Service, the community health aid were two of the ones I remember being cut very quickly.
By 1979, it became clear that you had two portents that was leading to destruction. One was the economy was in a terrible state. You had failed almost every IMF test. Your balance of payments was beyond crisis levels. And two, the party was just not capable of uniting around a common theme. And by 1979 also, the violence had become, it was intolerable. On February 3rd, 1980, he held a meeting with his parliamentary group in which he announced that at the earliest possible opportunity he was going to hold an election. He said he wanted the political issue to be settled, and he felt that if the political issue was settled, then the economic issue would ultimately be settled. The bugbear there was that we did not have a voters list, and it took us 10 months or 8 months to come up with a voters list, during which time there was just a flow of blood.
In fact, from the moment he announced that you won't have the election till the list was ready, campaigning started. So we had a long period of campaigning, and then it was a time that we begin to have the repercussions from the socialist agenda, from the outside, like the United States, in my opinion.
And there were all kinds of pronunciations from many quarters, which seemed as though we were in for a serious civil war.
By the time you get to 1980, 79, 80, the violence, in my view, is different than what it was in 76. It was more organized, more politically calculated.
What led to the subsequent loss of the PNP wasn't the feeling that it was a tyrannical government. It was the feeling that it had started to control the place and now couldn't control it again.
Between 77, 78, 79, 80, what we were in Jamaica is that we were in the vortex of Cold War politics. And that the actors that were there were not just actors in Jamaica, they were actors outside of Jamaica.
The convergence of forces, which led to the overwhelming defeat of the People's National Party, led to a strengthening, I think, of the conviction of the party.
A dream deferred is not a dream surrendered. They sounded forth the trumpet that shall never call retreat. The comrades will march on.
There's a time when only a few of us were in Parliament, but that did not deter us from standing up and defending the rights of the Jamaican people.
It involved an effort to re-evaluate what had gone wrong electorally. It involved the party in also trying to rebuild organizationally across the country, and to, more significantly, to re-evaluate its policy position in light of the changes taking place in the world. By 1983, I think the party again had managed to recover its political standing with the population.
Coming out of the 1980 election, we had agreed that there were supposed to be some fundamental changes in the electoral system. And one of them was to have an up-to-date electoral list. And you had to be about 24, 25 years old to vote in that 1983 election. fact is, the electoral office really couldn't have really been ready for that particular election. So the whole thing was quite a sham.
It was more important to stand for principle than to stand for election. There would be many more, and the oldest party in the Caribbean would be there. But not this election. No list, no contest.
Basically, we were out of parliament, but we were far more vocal and visible because we did what were called people's forums, outreach sessions. There was constant sessions where we reported to the country on issues at our own parliament, so to speak. And it was really a buoyant and a bubbling time.
At the Economic Commission, we would have a monthly sort of retreat in which each shadow cabinet member would present to the group. And the presentation was, what is the problem? What is the government, that was the JLP administration, doing about it? What would you, as a PNP minister, do about it? And how much would it cost? And those four basic questions exposed virtually all the weaknesses.
My work as secretary for the party's political education commission was to go and travel this country, and I learned this country. And in that process, what we did was that we organized education groups in constituencies where we discussed every single thing. And so the July NEC became the important NEC before the September conference that set the agenda. But that agenda was set by ordinary people and through the process that we were involved in. I don't know of any other kind of democracy inside a party that runs that way. This was a mass democratic party.
We are doing a little canvas.
The art of the worker is to draw a line of connection between the needs and anxieties of the people and their party. This is a miraculous craft of the long walking, bike riding, bus taking, long talking party worker.
A canvas is a visit by two persons from a political party to every single home on the voters list, speaking to as many voters as possible who appear on that list to find out vital information to assist in the election. The training sessions are designed particularly for you who are going out to meet the people. You need to study the documents that have been presented to you, particularly those on party policy, because you cannot keep a conversation if you don't know what you're talking about. To trace them off and tell them, "Gwe, because PNP are going to win without them," that's not the answer. You need to be able to respond to the issues as they raise them. The canvassing is one of the most important activities for your party in any election period. Whatever else the party does, if it does not find out who are the voters, what type of people they are, then the whole exercise will be to naught. If you carry out your job to the best of your ability, then there's no doubt your party will form the government at the elections.
Winning an election, by the way, depends on the organizing of your workers.
They are the strength of the People's National Party. We are leaders. We have a responsibility to lead and to keep the party united and strong. At the same time, it is the people out there on the ground. They are the backbone of this movement.
In 1989, there's an end to the Cold War. World communism no longer exists. So that moves geopolitics as a consideration from international politics.
I think in that situation, the People's National Party and Michael Manley had to now think what it is that they had to do to try and meet the new world situation. And how do we manage it? By trying to keep at the same time a certain set of core values to do with equality and to do with justice in a world when those two things are no longer core values.
And the 1990s was a very complex period. It was the period where the economy shifted in 1990 from the previous 2 decades of heavy state intervention, heavy government intervention into the economy, into the private economy. First in the 1970s under the People's National Party, and continuing in the 1980s under the Jamaica Labour Party under Edward Seaga. And it was in the 1990s that it gradually shifted from heavy state intervention to the state's role retreating towards regulation.
Some of us, like myself, who were business persons and came from a business community, Michael Manley really encouraged us to get involved at that time. For example, he put me in charge of privatization for government. And there was a whole ferment around deregulation, privatization, liberalization of the economy at that time, and how to communicate that to the party cadres, that it wasn't a betrayal of the principles of socialism and of democratic socialism in particular, but this was really using a different vehicle appropriate for the time to achieve the same ends.
I extended broadening the base of Jamaican electors, and those who understand the needs and concerns of electors, Jamaica's business climate will ensure its be improved.
We have managed to remove from politics that class war or ideological war that was played out in the 70s. Now that has enabled the business community to review its position in relation to the People's National Party.
We see that beginning in the early 1990s with liberalization in the financial sector and with the removal of exchange controls and the shift to a flexible exchange rate.
There was the whole licensing of radio stations, and we also had hearings which led to other television stations, CVM. Then we put in train the team that began to look at the matter of freedom of information.
About that time, Manley was ill. Patterson acted for significant periods for him, and by late 1990 indicated he'll be resigning.
It has been a very rare and extraordinary privilege to have been allowed to serve in this chamber, and I must say to have made many, many friends on both sides of the aisle. As I go, I ask two things. One, I think you would do well always to listen to and be receptive to criticism. Because we have to learn, we have to improve, we are not perfect. And many criticisms are well-founded. But at the same time, I would urge you, if you hold on to the simple guiding truth, that you have one mission in the end, and that is service. No other mission. He who wants power for itself does not deserve it. And funny enough, he who dedicates his life to service through power will probably depart with some honor.
Unity in the country has to include unity in the party. Insofar as the composition of the cabinet, I answer in a phrase: the team stays in place. There is one recurring lesson from the past 30 years of independence. It is simply that a nation divided against itself cannot stand.
There was a contest between Portia Simpson and P.J. Patterson. The result was that P.J. Patterson won convincingly and became the President of the People's National Party and Prime Minister of Jamaica. Within 1 year, almost to the date, he called an election.
Wow! What a crowd! Wow! Are you ready for a People's National Party victory? Are you ready for PJ Patterson?
In the 90s, when the then party leader, P.J. Patterson, went not to the nation first, but to a party gathering, a major party gathering, and spoke about the need for wholesome values and positive attitudes, that the message began to resonate with the party and began to take it seriously.
No need to hide it. I feel good. You feel good. Because you see this team up I have up here? Make them stand up. Make you see them. It's a formidable team. It's a dread team. We have restored a sense of hope among our people. We have established an era of social calm and political peace. We have fought against tribalism in political life.
P.J. Patterson never had a history of being involved in political tribalism, but he was a part of a party that was, one of the poles. So somehow he came to his leadership with the view that, he was going to do whatever he could to reduce, ultimately eliminate political partisanship.
The Electoral Commission, which was started before, but he deepened and expanded its capacity until that became an institution which was respected both by the Jamaica Labour Party and the PNP. So that fight about the outcome of results in election time, we have put that behind us.
It allowed us contact on a daily basis with the other side. And it was very important in terms of cooling the sometimes turbulent relationship.
But they also, in the process, encouraged people to see that this was part of a development exercise and not something to be treated as a win-at-all-costs exercise.
The fact that you can have friendly rivalry now politically that did not exist once upon a time, it is speaking volumes to how and where we are now at this stage of our political development.
Don't stop it now.
Building bridges of communication, paving roads of development, constructing a modern nation. How do you move forward and not leave anyone behind? Free up the information, tighten up the banking, firm up the voters list. Our achievements are solid, our actions transparent. Don't stop the progress.
Although one tends to try and separate the 4 terms, for me, essentially, they constitute a continuum. You start with certain clear objectives from the very beginning.
His view, which I think is a very legitimate one, is that if you have infrastructure, then you will get investments and you will get a better quality of life for people, because people can then engage in profitable economic activity.
We did a lot of work in those days on the micro and small business programs, work that was necessary to set up structures to allow ordinary people to get loans to start their businesses or to get their businesses growing.
Unless you have the people with you, nothing is possible. Because in the long run, unless their needs are addressed, in the long run, there's nothing.
Significant in the Patterson period too was the disengagement with the International Monetary Fund. It was always felt that it wasn't possible.
Test that has always caused us difficulty in preceding years is the net international reserves test. We passed that test. We exceeded the target by US $70 million.
We put a high emphasis on infrastructure. We sought to strengthen some of the social services, but we were operating within the context of the limitation of this additional debt taken on as part of fixing the problems in the financial sector.
This shift away from heavy state intervention in the financial sector, it wasn't executed perfectly. They did not anticipate that liberalization would lead to such a heavy inflow of foreign exchange. Because when foreign exchange comes in and the central bank buys that foreign exchange, it puts Jamaican dollars into the economy. Too much Jamaican money basically causes the money to be worth less. And that showed up as rising prices. People were demanding a high rate of interest because they expected high inflation. And then something unexpected happened. The inflation rate came down. It came down from the 80% that it was in 1992 down to its average of 20-odd%, which it had been in the previous 2 decades, and came all the way down to the single digits. This means that the real burden of high interest rates now becomes something that is destructive. Many businesses defaulted on their bank debts, and that's why the banks got into trouble.
There's too many institutions which are allowed in with inadequate regulations. That is bad for like investment houses, but the insurance companies also became involved in that game.
So the party had to think what to do. There are some who felt allow the banks to collapse. I remember Patterson and Davis, Omar Davis, being very clear that if you allowed people's bank accounts for them to lose it and their insurance policies, you'd have a greater financial crisis and people would not put their money back in the banks.
I met somebody from rural Jamaica who I had known a very long time, and he said, "Prime Minister, I don't care which institution it is. I don't care who owns it, but I have worked very hard for my money. And if I go down to Falmouth and I can't get it, blood will flow like a river into the Martha Brae." And that made it very clear to me that no matter how massive were the resources required, we would have to address it.
Big advantage of the way the government in the late 1990s dealt with the financial crisis was that it minimized the length of time in which the economy would be unable to function. The downside of that, by absorbing all of the bad debts and protecting all the depositors, the downside is that it's the most expensive way to deal with a financial crisis.
Learning from the factors which had led to the crisis in the financial sector, we have tightened financial regulations. We established the Financial Services Commission. We have strengthened the regulatory powers of the Bank of Jamaica, and such that it should be noted that nothing happened in Jamaica during the crash in 2008.
In 1998, Jamaica was one of the countries that had the lowest teledensity rates in the Caribbean. We had not benefited at all from the revolution that by then had started with wireless telephony, telecommunications. So we set about renegotiating those licenses. Jamaica has moved from a position of very low teledensity to one of the highest in the region.
Overall, it was a very important period for Jamaica. His own leadership went beyond Jamaica, and Patterson has led many critical groups on behalf of the Caribbean.
PNP massive and they move again. 1, 2, 3. 3 terms had never been achieved. Then it was 4. More changes were in store.
I'm at night coming into town. Asked their young man who was we, suppose Mr. Phillips win, what would we play? And suppose Mr. Simpson win, what would we play? He will choose one solid as a rock for Mr. Phillips, and we choose Miss Simpson, strength of a woman.
The party said, woman time now. Red, orange and yellow rejoiced at the new dawn.
She cares, not rhetorically, but she cares by her presence and her involvement.
I said privately, I said here again, this man, Peter Phillips, is prepared to work fully united with our party leader because we have a job together to do.
No one can dispute her passion for the people, her determination to ensure that others from backgrounds similar to hers, and indeed not dissimilar to mine, can be afforded the opportunity and be able to rise in service to the nation. That is the sort of story which would have warmed the hearts of Norman Manley when he spoke about the capacity and spirit of the Jamaican people.
A political party must find ways to understand itself better, to lick its wounds, to recover its vision, and to grow.
A series of events took place during that period which would have undermined the popularity of the party, including the contribution by a company called Trafigura to the party, which became the source of great concern.
I'm not saying by any means that there aren't some people who may have enriched themselves from politics or used their political position. But the vast majority of people make a tremendous sacrifice.
My own view, I don't think there's any member of the PNP government who was about enrichment for themselves. But I don't think we did enough to actually stamp out corruption.
It pushed us so far that I think we had to step back and look at who we really were, and to identify what were our core strengths.
And the whole debate and discussion around issues like the progressive agenda, I think, helped remind us that this is what the movement is really about.
And one of the things that really resonated for me with the agenda is the principle of power. Participation, really engaging people, accountability and responsibility. And if we live by those things, good governance comes. And if good governance is there, then you have a thriving democracy. And if you have a thriving democracy, it means you have an engaged citizenry. It means that all the arms of the society is working towards the same vision.
Progressive agenda is about us working together and mobilizing the nation, not just the People's National Party or members of government, to work together to go for growth and development. We've been speaking about it for a long time and seems so elusive. But I think if we unite as one Jamaican nation and work together, we will be able to get there.
Officers of this noble movement, the same way you're mobilized to be here is the same way I want you to mobilize to ensure the next election.
Comrades, anytime the election call, we know that Western Westmoreland are ready, and are gone, we're gone. Need a rain, no time.
We started yesterday morning on a mission to retake Jamaica and to ensure we hand it to you, the people of Jamaica. Help is on the way. The People's National Party will return to power.
All those who have a vote, put up your hand.
This is, as they say, crunch time. And at this time, my focus is on the people of Jamaica. Not just some of the people, but all the people. The People's National Party's focus is on the building of partnerships to transform this nation. We are focused on building this nation and engendering growth and development. At the center of our plan is consultation, partnership, and dialogue as our progressive agenda dictates. We would consult, not insult, dialogue, not monologue, engage, not enrage.
We came back to office in the face of serious problems both internationally and domestically. And any government coming in, there's no magic wand.
I think the lesson of the financial implosion is that capitalism is under threat in its old form. That what is good for the goose is not good for the gander, and that we have to try and carve out our space.
The People's National Party has a most important role to play because over the years we have been visionary and we continue to be.
It continues to evolve both in its structures, in its policies and programs to be meaningful to the contemporary period.
That is the party of which I'm a member, and therefore I have every reason to be proud of being a member of the party. Is my party perfect? It's made up of human beings, so there's no perfection.
The PNP's greatest strength is drawn from its history, what it set out to do, what it has contributed to the growth and development of this country, and the hope that it still gives to our people.
For us who came up through the 70s, I must say, and the 80s, we had an abiding faith in our movement, because we are aware of what the PNP has done for Jamaica. For consciousness building, on social legislation, to change the whole Jamaica landscape, we have done a lot.
I think it's very important that persons see ourselves as historical agents carrying on the mission that our founding fathers embarked on, and treating it with a sense of care and responsibility to ensure that it is not diluted, that it is not corrupted, that it remains intact for what it should be.
You know, under each of our leaders so far, each of them has set a stage. Norman Manley, he set the stage for independence. Michael Manley, he opened up the views of persons within the society with the vast amount of social legislation that was passed under his administration. Patterson, he opened up the country. That's what he did. This present Prime Minister, she is resurrecting what we were supposed to be doing a long time ago as far as fixing the economy is concerned.
Many people say Jamaica is a poor country. I don't agree with that. And I feel that we have enough in Jamaica to pursue our own course.
I tell young people wherever I get the opportunity, whenever I get it, a very simple but profound truth. The last four letters in the word Jamaican are I-C-A and I can. And if we had a wave of I can across the length and breadth of Jamaica, what a nation this nation would be. My brothers and sisters, comrades all, we in the PNP know that each new day the sun rises. That is our symbol of hope, the provider of pure, unbridled energy and light.
I want the People's National Party to remember what we were at the beginning and why we were created to help people to change, to become better, to become aware of our responsibility of one to the other.
But we have come a far way. We have come from colonialism to now we are an independent nation. We are now making our own decisions. It's a journey. It's an important journey. We might slip, we might slide along the way, but if we stick to it, we're going to get there together.
The trumpet has sounded, my countrymen all. Awake from your slumber and answer this call. The torch has been lighted, the dawn is at hand. Who joins in the fight for this native land? Thank you.
Thank you, comrades. Safe journey home. Music, Dookie, music.
Trumpet has sounded, my countrymen all. So awake from your slumber and answer the call. The torch has been lighted, the dawn is at hand. Who joins in the fight for his own native land? Land of my birth, I pledge to the campaign long, the road will be dreary, the barrier strong, our progress may falter and energies wane, but steadfast in spirit, although we will gain. Land of my birth, I pledge to thee, in steadfast assurance that God will look down and give us His blessing of efforts to crown. Let all be united to build by His grace a nobler Jamaica, a loftier race. Land of my birth, I pledge to thee, loyal and faithful.
When one is free, it is easier to look back and select out of the past what is good and useful.